Acts of the Apostles, chapter 24, lesson 25. In studying this chapter, 1. To review the accusation of the Jews presented by Tertullus, 2. To consider Paul's defense before Felix, and 3. To observe Felix's delay in rendering judgment of Paul. The chief priests, elders, and Tertullus, an orator, came from Jerusalem to Caesarea to make accusations and to provide evidence against Paul. Tertullus was an eloquent spokesman. He began by giving Felix great praise. He said, "We enjoy great peace. Prosperity is being brought to this nation by your foresight. We accept it with all thankfulness." Acts 24, 1-4. After 5 days, the high priest, Ananias, came down with certain elders and an orator, one Tertullus. They informed the governor against Paul. When he was called, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, "Seeing that by you we enjoy much peace, and that excellent measures are coming to this nation, we accept it in all ways and in all places, most excellent Felix, with all thankfulness. But that I don't delay you, I entreat you to bear with us and to hear a few words." Next, he levied the charges against Paul. They found Paul to be a plague, a creator of dissension among all the Jews throughout the world. They found him to be a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes, and he tried to profane the temple. Acts 24, 5-6. For we have found this man to be a plague, an instigator of insurrections among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, and we arrested him. We wanted to judge him according to our law. Tertullus reviewed the events at the temple. The Jews had seized Paul. They wanted to judge him according to their law. However, the Roman commander Lysias took Paul with great violence from them. Lysias took Paul to Felix and commanded the Jews to bring their accusations against Paul before him. The attending Jews agreed with Tertullus. Acts 24, 7-9. But the commanding officer, Lysias, came by and with great violence took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. By examining him yourself, you may ascertain all these things of which we accuse him. The Jews also joined in the attack, affirming that these things were so. Paul was given the opportunity to provide his defense before Felix. Paul indicated that he was happy to speak for himself. He recognized Felix to have been a judge of the nation for many years. Paul reviewed the events of his defense to the Jewish accusations. He had gone up to Jerusalem to worship about 12 days prior. Acts 24, 10-11. When the governor had beckoned to him to speak, Paul answered, "Because I know that you have been a judge of this nation for many years, I cheerfully make my defense, seeing that you can recognize that it is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship at Jerusalem." The Jews did not find Paul disputing with anyone nor inciting the crowd, either in the synagogue or in the city. Paul stated that they could not prove these accusations. He confessed that he worshiped God according to the way, which they called a sect. He believed all the things written in the law and prophets. Paul stated that he had hope in God, just as they do, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. As a result, he strove to have a conscience without offense toward God and men. Acts 24, 12-16. In the temple they didn't find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the synagogues or in the city. Nor can they prove to you the things of which they now accuse me. But this I confess to you, that after the way, which they call a sect, so I serve the God of our fathers, believing all things which are according to the law, and which are written in the prophets, having hope toward God, which these also themselves look for, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. Herein I also practice always, having a conscience void of offense toward God and men. Paul had returned to Jerusalem after many years to bring alms and offerings to his nation. This was the time when some Jews from Asia, who had not come before Felix, found Paul, purified in the temple, and neither with a mob nor with tumult. If they had an accusation against Paul, they should have come before Felix at this time. Paul asked those Jews present if they had found any wrongdoing in him when he stood before the Sanhedrin council. Acts 24, 17-20. Now after some years I came to bring gifts for the needy to my nation and offerings, amid which certain Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, not with a mob nor with turmoil. They ought to have been here before you, and to make accusation if they had anything against me, or else let these men themselves say what injustice they found in me when I stood before the council. The only statement that Paul thought they may have objected to was that he had cried out among them, "Concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged by you this day." Acts 24:21. Unless it is for this one thing that I cried standing among them, concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged before you today. Given that Felix had a more accurate knowledge of the way, he adjourned the proceedings. He stated that he would make a decision on the case when Lysias, the commander, came to Caesarea. Paul was held by the centurion, but was given liberties. His friends were allowed to visit him and provide for him. Acts 24:22-23. But Felix, having more exact knowledge concerning the way, deferred them, saying, "When Lysias, the commanding officer, comes down, I will decide your case." He ordered the centurion that Paul should be kept in custody, and should have some privileges, and not to forbid any of his friends to serve him or to visit him. Later, Felix and his wife Drusilla called for Paul. Drusilla was Jewish. They heard Paul concerning faith in Christ. Paul reasoned before them about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come. This caused Felix to become afraid. Acts 24:24-25. But after some days Felix came with Drusilla his wife, who was a Jewess, and sent for Paul, and heard him concerning the faith in Christ Jesus. As he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was terrified and answered, "Go your way for this time, and when it is convenient for me, I will summon you." He sent Paul away. He indicated he would call for him at a more convenient time. Felix hoped for a bribe from Paul to release him. Felix sent for him often. After 2 years, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix as governor. Felix wanted to do the Jews a favor, so he left Paul bound. Acts 24:26-27. Meanwhile, he also hoped that money would be given to him by Paul, that he might release him. Therefore he also sent for him more often and talked with him. But when 2 years were fulfilled, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and desiring to gain favor with the Jews, Felix left Paul in bonds. Acts of the Apostles, chapter 24, lesson 25, the end.